I walked over 1,000 miles across Spain in honor of my dad, and I'm going to share every lesson I learned along the way. I really did walk 500 miles on one francés, over 500 on another, and 150 on the Portuguese, for a total of 1,186 miles. 1,000 sounds better. If you aren't familiar with it, the Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage across Spain and Portugal. There are many different routes, but they all lead to the same place. The destination is the cathedral at Santiago de Compostela. The main routes have plenty of hostels called albergues and restaurants all along the way, so it's less of an extreme wilderness experience and more of a communal and spiritual one. It's a very stripped down, distilled version of life. It's life in its most basic and purest format. All you're doing is putting one foot in front of the other, walking in one direction, eating and sleeping for about 5 weeks straight. This brings a very unique opportunity to be totally present with ourselves and just a bunch of cool people from all over the world. So it was my dad's dream to walk the Camino once he retired, but unfortunately he got cancer and passed away just 8 months before his retirement. And even though it wasn't the type of trip that I would typically choose for myself, I decided to walk it in his honor. It ended up being a transformational experience for me, so I documented everything that I learned along the way, and I wanted to share that with you guys in case it might be helpful. These are not new ideas. Some of them might seem super obvious to you. I feel like these are the types of lessons that have to kind of smack you in the face in a really intense context in order for you to absorb them, and even then you have to be reminded of them regularly, or at least I do. Okay, number 1, your brain has so much in it that you are not aware of. In this day and age of constant internet access and distractions, we almost never give our brains the space to just be free. The only time that I'm truly alone with my thoughts is in the shower. Well, the Camino is one really long shower. I didn't have internet access on the Camino, just the occasional Wi-Fi at the albergues or hostels. So I was walking 8 or 9 hours a day, just raw dogging it with my own brain. I had a little bit of music downloaded on my phone, so I would listen to music if I was really suffering, but my phone battery sucked. It was an old phone at the time, so I needed to prioritize the map and the Buen Camino app. So because I had so much time alone with my brain, I learned that there's just all sorts of stuff in there that I had no idea was still in there. It's so funny, the songs that pop into your head. Literally songs I haven't heard or thought about in 20 years. I don't know what it's called or who sings it, but and I swear by the moon and the stars in the sky. Getting kind of loopy. Singing High School Musical. I don't even know a single word to those songs. For some reason, that's what's in my head. Okay, bye. This, to me, honestly goes to show the weight of everything you consume. The things you absorb stick with you a lot longer than you'd realize. So maybe be careful what you allow into your brain. I watch so many murder documentaries. I have so much murder information in there for life, I bet. Also be aware that things from your past that don't seem to be bothering you on a day-to-day basis, like old traumas and things, they're in there. And if you haven't processed them, if you just pushed them deep down, they will come back up when given the opportunity to. Number 2, first impressions are often wrong. You never know what someone has been through. I have to be reminded of this all the time for some reason. I used to think that I had a really good intuition about people. I used to think that I'd be able to sniff out a serial killer if I needed to. At this point, I've experienced my first impressions being totally wrong enough to know that that is just not the case, but never as acutely as I did on the Camino. So in regular life, you might meet a bunch of people at a party or a work event, but chances are you're not getting to know those people very deeply. But on the Camino, you're meeting meeting dozens of new people from all over the world, and you're getting to know them like pretty deeply in a very short amount of time. This is true for travel in general, and it's honestly the reason why I've always believed that travel is super important. But the Camino in particular, because you're all doing the same thing, you're going in the same direction, you see each other day after day, and you're sleeping like right next to each other in bunk beds, which is very intimate. My friend Quentin is a very good example of this. When I first met him, he just seemed so serious and brooding. I genuinely thought that he did not like me, but he turned out to be the sweetest, goofiest, most caring person, and by the end of it, we were best friends. He's still one of my favorite people in the entire world.
When we said we need to sing that.
It's funny, I met a couple of big, like kind of scary seeming guys who ended up being just the sweetest, most sensitive people. One of them was really vulnerable with me and cried with me, which I did not expect. You would never expect that just looking at him. And on the flip side, the tiniest women on the Camino, I'm thinking of Birgit and Christian, they were the toughest people by far. Not only because of what they were physically capable, because physically they were very strong, but also because of what I later learned they had endured throughout their lives. So physically and mentally, so tough. The truth is, you never know what someone is going through. You never know what they've experienced or what they're capable of. So don't assume anything about anyone. Number 3. The best way to make deep friendships really quickly is to do something hard together. I feel like this is obvious, but also overlooked. And you can see this on a spectrum. On one end, people who have been through war together are instantly family for life. And on the other end, people who have just partied together for 5 years could still just feel like acquaintances. The depth of your friendships depends on the depth of your experiences together. I've seen a lot of people online lately lamenting that it's difficult to find friends nowadays and wondering how to go about building community. It's obvious that a lot of people are too isolated, working from home in their little cocoons, maybe going out on the weekends to party, but not really finding any depth or connection out there. It's so hard to form a deep bond with someone you just chill or have fun with. Doing something hard together or just being there for each other through hard times, that's how real friendship happens. I was honestly shocked at how many friends I made on the Camino. I think what's more shocking is how many of them still feel like family to me now, almost 3 years later. It's obviously tricky with time zones, and it's a little sad that we're all spread out all over the world, but the bond we made on the Camino is so strong still that the distance doesn't diminish the relationship. I mean, my friend Lara was just here visiting me just a couple months ago. I think this also explains why they call it the Camino of Love. I made fun of this when I first heard it, but I low-key ended up kind of falling in love with someone that I was only with for a week. Meanwhile, I recently dated someone in the city for about 2 months, and I feel like we knew nothing about each other. Actually, I almost forgot about this. Multiple people I met on my solo Frances are now married and have babies with people they met on that Camino just 2.5 years ago. That's 4 people who are married from my Camino that I know of. The Camino is obviously magical, but it's also just the perfect environment for forming a deep bond really quickly. So, how do we bring this into our normal lives? I guess we gotta do something hard with our friends. I think it's really important that we share our hard times with the people in our lives, that we lean on them and allow them to be there for us. Too many people, but Americans in particular, are so individualistic that they believe sharing hardships with a friend is either showing too much weakness or being a burden. Chances are, if you open up to the people in your lives, it will make your relationships so much stronger. And if it doesn't, maybe they aren't the right people for you.
But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more to be the man who walked 1,000 miles.
Number 4, you can't use logic to analyze things and react to things that are out of your control, therefore beyond your comprehending. One day, when I was walking alone on the Meseta, I wasn't feeling my best, I was in pain in multiple places. I hadn't taken a rest day yet. It was going to be really hot that day. So I was considering stopping in the closest town, but I couldn't decide because there were like a dozen variables at play and there was no way to know what was going to happen either way, which made me feel anxious because I'm a perfectionist and I wanted to do the perfect thing. And then this occurred to me.
Okay, I'm recording this for myself so I don't forget. All this time I'm doing a lot of future thinking, like what do I do in the next town? What do I do in the town after that? Where should I sleep? What do I do with my career? What do I do with my relationships? And then I'm also thinking of the past, like how do I let go of the past? How do I let go of my first boyfriend? How do I let go of my second boyfriend? The answer to all of these questions is to just focus on one step at a time, because I don't know what's gonna happen with any of it. It's all so far ahead or so far behind or maybe still happening. But either way, overanalyzing every single thing isn't helping anything. When I overthink and try and rationalize, I'm detaching myself from the present moment, which is detaching myself from my intuition. That's exactly what I've been looking for. The answer to how to get my intuition back. There's that spot that I've been trying to get back to that I felt like I've lost ever since my dad died. And I think the answer is just being in the present. I know it's so obvious.
A little bit of analyzing and planning is obviously a good thing, but overthinking about things in the future when you have no idea what's going to happen, that's just pure torture. At some point, you have to put all the information that you have to the side, put one foot in front of the other, and just follow your intuition. When you're really in touch with your intuition, it gives you a sense of confidence and faith that everything is going to be okay, whether you're spiritual or not. It doesn't have to be God or the universe. It's more just faith in yourself that you'll know the right thing to do when the moment arises. And that day did end up being perfect, by the way, so I was freaking out for no reason. Number 5, have faith in timing and don't get too attached to outcomes. This kind of goes along with the last lesson, but it's not exactly the same. Another time I was walking alone and thinking a lot about someone I liked and wondering if I would ever see them again. I happened to have a song downloaded on my phone that was exactly what I needed in that moment. It's a deep cut by Phoebe Bridgers called Waiting Room. It's a little cheesy, but I'm going to read you part of the lyrics. She says, "And I can wish all that I want, but it won't bring us together. Plus, I know whatever happens to me, I know it's for the better." She goes on to repeat this line, "I know it's for the better," 45 times in a row for 3 entire minutes. It just like the music builds and it gets very intense. And I listened to that song over and over and over again because I needed to drill it into my brain. When my dad died, I became so resistant to the idea that anything happens for a reason. I used to believe it, but then this thing happened and it was just so unfair. I stopped believing in anything. I lost all faith and was just super nihilistic, which, you know, it makes sense. I look back on that version of myself and I feel empathy for her. But in the end, it's really just no way to live your life. And it sounds super cheesy, but the Camino is honestly the exact thing that helped pull me out of that. There's no proof that anything happens for a reason, but I think having faith that there's a reason that maybe I'm too stupid to understand in this moment is a better way to live, whether it's true or not. Because the only thing that I really do know is that I don't know anything. So yeah, we never know when someone's part in our life is coming to an end. All we can really do is enjoy each moment together, and maybe we'll see them down the road again, but maybe not. Number 6 is a lesson from my dad, who always told me that I needed to learn to walk through fire and not get burned. My dad said this to me all the time growing up and never fully explained it, so I didn't really understand what he meant. I think that he knew that I needed to figure it out on my own, and it finally hit me on my solo Camino. My dad was very strong and stoic, and I've always been very sensitive. So all that time, I just assumed he was telling me that I needed to toughen up, but it's more than that. To walk through fire and not get burned is to experience hardship and not let it incapacitate you. It doesn't mean to become a robot and be tough and dissociate from the pain, but to walk straight through it and keep going. Because the truth is, the only way out of a hard time is straight through. This means not running away, not turning to coping mechanisms and dissociating. It's staring that thing in the face and feeling everything. That's how you process things and eventually learn from them. Turning to coping mechanisms and distractions feels really good in the moment, but all it does is prolong the process in the end. The more you avoid the pain, the longer it's going to stick around. Like many others, I'm sure, I suppressed some things from my childhood and kept them buried very deep down inside of me for about 20 years. In the moment when those things happened, I kind of just coped by running away and distracting myself because I was young. Like, that's what young people do. And I had no idea that any of that was still affecting me, but for whatever reason, last summer, I had this urge to, like, excavate it and confront it. It was very intense. But ever since then, it totally improved, like, the way I talk to myself and the way I treat myself. Because I think we get used to carrying things and not knowing what it feels like with or without them, you know? I should wait for the... When I was 18, I dated this guy in Las Vegas who was so sweet. His nickname was Sunshine. And every time he heard or saw an ambulance go by, he would say, "Oh, I hope everyone's okay." And that has stuck with me since I was 18. That kindness and empathy is very rare because, like, most New Yorkers walking around the street will hear a siren and like let it agitate them or get annoyed because they're just thinking about themselves and not realizing that, like, that sound means that somebody is having an emergency. And I hope they're okay, you know? Anyway, when pain and trauma is suppressed and not processed, it manifests itself in so many ugly ways. And yeah, I just feel like the world would be a better place if everyone learned how to process their trauma. Okay, number 7, pain is relative and valuable. So when you're walking almost 20 miles a day, every day for 5 weeks straight, pain becomes a very regular thing. All kinds of pain in all kinds of places, but it becomes normal and you actually build a tolerance for the pain as long as it's not an injury, and you eventually get stronger because of it. So there's this thing in neuroscience called the pleasure-pain balance. I first read about this in the book Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke. So in this, she explains that pleasure and pain are processed in overlapping regions of the brain and work as opposing forces in a balance mechanism. Too much exposure to comfort and pleasure lowers our tolerance for pain, and occasional exposure to pain increases our tolerance for it and makes it easier to feel pleasure. For example, a spoiled child who's used to getting everything they want, all the toys and candy that their heart desires, is much more likely to have a meltdown at the slightest inconvenience. And someone who's experienced a lot of hardship in their lives will feel an outsized amount of joy at seemingly very simple things. I'm not a David Goggins fan. I'm not advocating for, like, extreme sports or masochism or doing some, like, life-threatening stunt just to prove that you're tough. I just think a lot of us these days live in a little too much comfort, which ironically makes us less happy overall. On the Camino, even though every single day is somewhat painful or uncomfortable, the amount of joy you feel makes it so worth it. The simplest things feel like heaven in that environment. Hot coffee in the morning, cold water, especially on the meseta, just sitting down for a minute, the shade of a tree. Oh my God, the shade of a tree.
I hope we get some shade soon. I'm happier now.
The biggest reason, in my opinion, of why these experiences of pain are valuable is because they can serve as reminders for the rest of our lives of what we're capable of overcoming. It's something you get to compare everything to for the rest of your life. I'm sick right now, so I almost didn't film this video today, but then I remembered that one time on the Camino, I walked 38 kilometers with a head cold. That's about 23 miles. If I could do that, not feeling my best, I can sit in the comfort of my apartment and talk to a camera. I also walked 15 miles in 100-degree heat on the Meseta on the first day of my period. Like, that's a memory in my toolbox that I get to use for the rest of my life to remind myself of how strong I am and what I'm capable of. If you've run a marathon or been through childbirth or been homeless or overcome addiction, those are all such incredible markers of strength and resilience that you get to carry with you forever. All right, number 8. This is the last one. Motivation comes from having a clear and definite purpose. The most satisfying thing about walking the Camino is having a very clear purpose. It's so simple. The purpose is to get to Santiago. How do we fulfill that purpose? Walking in the same direction every single day. That's it. And every day that you finish your walk, you're a little closer to the destination. Seeing that progress on the map, watching yourself inch closer and closer, it's so gratifying. And my purpose was made even greater by my dad. Once I got it in my mind that I was going to walk to Santiago and get my dad's name written on the Compostela, nothing could have stopped me. Having him as my motivation every day was so fulfilling, which also affected my perception of time.
For example, even 10 kilometers can be like this or can be like this. It depends on the meaning you have for those kilometers and your motivation. If you are very motivated, those kilometers will be like this. But if you don't have a purpose, a why for which you do them, they'll feel like this. A month can be very short and very empty without any meaning. You will forget about it very quickly and you will throw it away, maybe at the recycle bin of your memories. But if it will be a month full of experiences and when you connect with yourself, with other people, with nature, with everything, it will feel like this.
By not having a clear purpose or direction to motivate us through life, we're quite literally wasting time. So we've all experienced this before, but a day spent at a job you absolutely hate, it drags on. It feels like it lasts forever. But if you spend years in that environment being miserable, all those days kind of blend together and feel like they went by in the blink of an eye. Life is too short for that. I personally lacked a sense of purpose for a long time. I'm not the type of person who is motivated by money or power or fame. So I just couldn't figure out why I should try so hard to be successful. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize that real purpose and fulfillment comes from providing value to others. Everyone has a different value that they can provide, but I think the overarching purpose for everyone is to share with others. Humans are not meant to live in isolation. All real joy comes from community.
What's your favorite thing that's happened on the Camino?
For me, like, the best one was today. I mean, we were like 83-year-old man and 32-year-old man. We are like 3 generations of eating together and laughing together. For me, it's like this kind of connection. It was just, that was life for me.
Yeah, it's nice.
The meaning of life is just sharing it with someone else. So when you share your life with someone, that's just the meaning of life.
It really sunk in for me on the Camino that my dream is to tell stories and to share them with others. If you've enjoyed these stories, I would love it if you subscribed. I love YouTube so much and have a lot of fun making these videos, so I look forward to hopefully growing my community here. If you've been on the Camino, leave a comment and let me know what you learned from it. And if you haven't been on the Camino, I'd love to hear an accomplishment that you have that you use in your toolbox to remind you how strong you are. All right, I think that's all. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all soon. 5 minutes ago I was saying I feel weird because I feel so many emotions all at once. Conflicting emotions. I feel happy, sad, grateful, depressed.
Yeah, I said that it's very good that you felt all those emotions because this means you are alive. You are a human being with emotions.
If you're walking and you feel your feet hurting, like,
Yeah, you're not a robot. you remember about them.
yeah, at least we have feet.
Yeah, we have it. Yeah.
I've been in my mind. It's such a line.